All right, so we left off talking about the average, the max, and the min, and we learned that on our exam, we won't be typing in the beginning and ending cell. We're going to be typing a named range. So several times on the exam, you will be naming ranges. Okay, so that's the average, max, and min command, function, excuse me. So let me talk to you about another function we use. Now you're not going to be, you don't have to worry about the HLOOKUP. We're not going to use that one on the exam, but you will be using the vertical lookup. Now the vertical lookup, this is how it works. So let me double click on this. So let me explain this. Take it up a little bit further. Well, we have a table, and here is our table. And the table that we're going to be searching our ranges from A6 down to B10. It's going to search in this first row. Once it identifies the source, it's going to count 1, 2, because we're going to give it the number 2, and then it's whatever's sitting here, it's going to be returned back to the report. As you can see, the goal amount. When we double click, you need to start typing it out. So equals VLOOKUP. Remember when we were doing this and practicing, type equals and you start VLOOK, and then double click down here in the blue to get the function up and running. Okay, so this is how you populate that function. The very first argument, and arguments are separated with these commas right there. The first argument is your lookup point. So you can either type E6 or you just click right on it. The next point is the table that you're going to. But more than likely, on the exam, you're going to name this range. What we learned on commissions, instead of typing out, go to this worksheet name and this location, it's easier just to use a named range. So the instructions will instruct you as to what to do. But let me just explain the syntax. So the second part of the argument, this is the worksheet name. You always include an exclamation point so the system knows this is the worksheet name, and you can see, you always make sure you do not have any typos because it will not recognize it. And you're telling it, okay system, go to the tables worksheet. Once you're there, then search in this range. And when you're in that range, comma, count to 2, and then you're in parenthesis, and then whatever's sitting there in that second location, that second column, return that number. So remember, when you're typing these out and you're working on your exam, it's 3 arguments. The lookup point, where the information is, and then once it's there, what number are you actually going to give it? How many columns over is it counting? So this has 3 arguments. So I would make notes to write that down. Now the other thing it's important to understand, when we use this range here, where is it going? It's the lookup array. Where is it going to find this stuff? We had to use absolute cell referencing. The reason why we did this, and this is very important, because on your test there's going to be instances where you're going to have to lock these in. It'll let you know when it needs absolute cell referencing. That's the dollar symbol before the letter and the dollar symbol before the number. That will lock that particular cell location in. So you can either type it in, or remember that if you just have your blinking cursor somewhere around there and you use your function F4, then it'll automatically convert it like that for you. So you will have to be concerned with how to use a VLOOKUP. Now the other one we're going to use is an if function. So if I double click on this, this is a friendly reminder. So we're looking, and I'll just show you the ones below since this is covering that number up. We're just looking to see, okay, this is the actual amount that you brought in versus the goal amount that was set. It was determined by management. So we're taking, whatever's sitting in that one location here, and we're determining, is this number greater than or equal to the number sitting over here? So it's a comparison, and that's the first argument. So that's before the comma. The first argument is going to do some kind of comparison. So if it is larger, then it will return this value, which is just the word yes. And remember, when it's a word, it must be in these quotation marks. If it evaluates and it's false, then it will return the word no. So you can see this number is not greater than or equal to, so we do return the word no. So this is what you need to remember, how to set this up on your exam. And remember, whenever you're trying to start using if function, you start typing equals if, and you double click in the blue to get it up and running. Now, most of the time when you're working with these functions, you can only do one row at a time. So you do not use absolute cell referencing in this particular instance, but you may use it somewhere on one of your locations when you type it out for your test. So it's not always guaranteed that you're going to just check one row at a time and you're going to have each number on each single row. Sometimes you might have to look over here and then you'll have one, I don't want to be confusing with that. I'm sorry, just read the instructions, and I do give you hints to tell you exactly what cell location to convert to absolute. So just make sure you slow down and read the instructions, and I'll let you know which one. For instance, you can see how this one is not, but this has been set to absolute. So just read your set of instructions. I don't want to confuse you. All right, so that was the VLOOKUP, and that's the if function. Now, if you had to type anything out, you just simply type the equals and you click on the cell, you go to your keyboard for your operators and you click on another cell, or you could just type it in. So that would be an example of a formula. You start with your equal sign and you can either click on the location or type it in and know that your operators must come from the keyboard. That's the plus sign, that's addition. This one's multiplication, that's considered division, and then this is subtraction. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 3 stuff. Let me just quickly remind you about when you are working with your charts. We won't have to worry about any line charts, and we won't be doing any charts like that. But however, we are going to be working with two charts like this. So you're going to have a pie chart, and this one's a cluster column chart, and I'll explain all this stuff to you. Okay, so let me just do a quick review of this. Now, when it comes to the pie charts, it's difficult to select your range. That's why I always recommend that maybe you type it out. So you could always type out this range being A4 colon to F4, and that you could see up here in the name box as I'm typing it out, and then comma, space, and then I'm just going to go ahead and type out another location, which would be here. And then once you're done typing, press enter. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I accidentally deleted it out. So let me retype this. Okay, and then when you're done typing it out, you just press enter, but for some reason I keep deleting mine out. So let me just go ahead and show. And when you're done typing it out up here in the name box, you just press enter. But anybody has a hard time during the exam, I'm happy to come over and assist you, because I want to make sure you have these ranges selected correctly. Once you have the range selected, you can see over here is a shortcut button, and you're going to go directly to the 2D pie. Now, the things you're going to do on the test, you're going to have to type out your title, type the title here. That'll be a requirement. It'll also be a requirement to understand, and let me get rid of this so you can see it. It's important to understand this button right here, which is called a charts element button. This button here, I know there's a legend down here. We'll turn that off. On the exam, it's going to ask you to turn that legend off, and it's going to ask you to turn on your data labels, but you have to hover over to this arrow, because we're going to turn on the data call out, and you can see this is what they look like. So we're going to mess around with the title, and then it's also going to ask you to turn off the legend and then turn on the data labels, but make sure the data call outs. So that's all you're going to do with the pie chart, and you're just going to move it into its position. Now, for a cluster column chart, which is, so you can see this is how this one looks. Again, this is your title, this is your data labels, and this is considered your legend. And when you click on your chart on the outer border, you can see here where here's your 3 elements of that chart. When you are inserting a cluster column chart, you have different elements here, and the only thing you really will do with this one, you'll insert it, you're going to type out a title, and then you're going to have to use this and let me go to the chart tools, you can see this switch row column button right here. When you click on it, you can see how it changes this information. So you will be directed to use this. And to insert this one, it's so much easier to select the range versus pie chart because it's just a click and drag approach like this. And you go to insert, and then here's for the columns, and the first one happens to be a cluster column. And there's your chart. So, and again, you're just going to go in here and type out a title. And I think the only other thing you're going to do this chart is apply this switch row column. So that's just one thing we didn't use much in class, so I just wanted to explain that to you. So let me just get rid of that. Okay, so now I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to move on to Chapter 4. Now, Chapter 4, there's two things that we did mostly was sort, filter information, and the other thing that we did was insert a pivot table. So it's important to understand that if you're outside this pivot table, that pane goes away, but if you're inside your pivot table, you can see you have your pane available. So the only thing that you're going to be required to do when you're on your exam for the pivot tables is just turning these fields on and off, which appear over here. So it's just going to have you insert one, and I'll show you quickly how to do that. And then it's going to have you turn on certain columns here, and these are all the column names of your data. So to actually insert one, it's going to ask you to select a range of information, and then you're going to go to the Insert tab, and the very first command button is the pivot table. At this point, you are moving to a new worksheet. You don't have to do anything. You just select OK, and it automatically appears like this. And then you need to go over here and turn things on to start seeing something that populates on your screen with all your data. So that's just a quick preview. And remember, if you just double click down here in the worksheet, you can go ahead and name it from that point. So let me delete that one out. So that's all you're really going to do with the pivot table. Maybe you'll go over to the design and apply some kind of style to it with these different categories, but it won't go anything beyond that. Okay, and lastly, I just want to talk to you about the sorting and filtering. Remember, when you're in the Data tab, if you don't see these arrows, you just click on this filter button, and then those arrows will appear. And once you have your arrows, your shortcut buttons, when you click on it, you can either sort up here. You can see this is based on characters, so it's sorting A to Z. This is based on dates, so that's why you have your oldest to newest. And over here on the contracts, you can see you have your smallest to largest. So these are your capabilities to sort. Now down at the bottom is your filtering. So for instance, for these different cities, you could select all to turn them all off, and then just turn one particular location on, and then you'll see that it filters down. So on the exam, you will have to sort and filter also. My recommendation, even though I'm giving this to you in chunks, I would recommend taking one project from Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4 of your homeworks and redo those at least once or twice to help you study for the exam. The more you practice, the quicker you will be, the more efficient you'll be with your time. Best of luck, and I hope this helped.